So, hello students, we are continuing our first chapter, the living world. A multicellular organism grows by cell division. So, how does a multicellular organism grow? They grow by cell division, that is, by dividing their cells continuously, the multicellular organism grows. In plants, this growth by cell division occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. So there are some difference in the case of plants as well as animals. In plants, this type of growth through cell division occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. In animals, this growth is seen only up to a certain age. However, cell division occurs in certain tissues to replace lost cells. So, in animals, this type of growth is seen only up to a certain age. In the case of humans also, we grow, but that growth is seen only up to a certain age. After that, we do not grow. We do not increase our height. The weight may change, but the growth. What is important is that growth. That growth is only occurring up to a certain age, and after that, the growth stops in the case of animals. However, if there is some injury in our hand, some injury happens in our hand or leg, then cell division occurs at that injured part to replace the lost cells. That doesn't happen in all the tissues, that only happens in certain tissues also. Cell division occurs to replace the lost cells in case of injuries or wounds, like that. Unicellular organisms grows by cell division. You can also see that unicellular organism means organisms having a single cell. They also grow by cell division. One can easily observe this in vitro cultures by simply counting the number of cells under the microscope. So you can easily observe this in vitro, means in the laboratory you can observe under the slide that first of all there will be only one cell, and after some time if you watch you can see number of cells. You can simply count and see that cell division has occurred under a microscope. In majority of higher animals and plants, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. One must remember that increase in body mass is considered as growth. Non-living objects also grow if we take increase in body mass as a criterion for growth. So, we have seen that increase in size or body mass is considered as growth. If we take that criteria, you can see that non-living objects also grow. Mountains, boulders and sand mounds do grow. You can see that a mountain, it will be small, then there will be accumulation of snow like that. They also increase in their mass. However, this kind of growth exhibited by non-living objects is by accumulation of material on the surface. In living organisms, growth is from inside. So in non-living organisms, how do they grow? A mountain will be small in the beginning, but later on there will be accumulation like snow or sand or something like that. They will be increasing in size, but that kind of growth is because of the accumulation of material on its surface from outside. In living organism, you can see that the growth is within, is from inside. Growth therefore cannot be taken as a defining property of living organisms. Conditions under which it can be observed in all living organisms have to be explained, and then we understand that it is a characteristic of living system. A dead organism does not grow. We all know that a dead organism does not grow. Reproduction likewise is a characteristic of living organism. Likewise, reproduction is a characteristic of living organism. In multicellular organisms, reproduction refers to the production of progeny possessing features more or less similar to those of parents. So, In multicellular organisms, what does reproduction means? Reproduction means you are producing a progeny and having a progeny which is having a feature is more or less similar to those of the parents. Invariably and implicitly we refer to sexual reproduction. So what does that mean? It means through sexual reproduction the parents produce their progeny and they will be more or less similar to their parents. Organisms reproduce by asexual means also, and reproduction is through sexual as well as asexual means. Fungi multiply and spread easily due to the millions of asexual spores they produce. How do fungi reproduce? They reproduce asexually through the millions of asexual spores that they produce. In lower organisms like yeast and hydra, we observe budding. This is very important. In yeast and hydra, we observe budding. In planaria flatworms, we observe true regeneration, that is, a fragmented organism regenerates the lost part of its body and becomes a new organism. In the case of planaria or flatworm, you can see regeneration, that is, if an organism loses one of its part, then that if you cut a planaria into two portions, then it will again regrow and grows into two organisms, two flatworms. The fungi, the filamentous algae, the proteinema of mosses all easily multiply by fragmentation. So this fragmentation is seen in fungus, filamentous algae, proteinema of mosses, etc. When it comes to unicellular organisms like bacteria, unicellular algae or amoeba, reproduction is synonymous with growth, that is, increase in number of cells. But when you come to a unicellular organism like a bacteria, a unicellular algae or amoeba, reproduction is similar to that of growth. Growth means increase in number of cells, right? So here also unicellular means they are having a single cell and they are reproducing also by increasing in the number of cells. We have already defined growth as equivalent to increase in cell number or mass. Hence we notice that in single celled organisms we are not very clear about the usage of these two terms, growth and reproduction. So in single celled organisms we are not clear about the usage of the term growth and reproduction because both have the same effect in the single celled organism. Growth means increase in number of cells. Reproduction also, they reproduce by increasing the number of cells. Further, there are many organisms which do not reproduce. Mules, sterile worker bees, infertile human couples, etc. Hence, reproduction also cannot be an all-inclusive defining characteristic of living organism. Of course, no non-living object is capable of reproducing or replicating by itself. So, there are also certain organisms which cannot reproduce, like mules, some sterile worker bees. Worker bees, they have different classes. They do not reproduce. Infertile human couples do not reproduce. So, like that, there are living organisms which cannot reproduce. So, reproduction cannot be an all-inclusive characteristic of a living organism. Another characteristic of life is metabolism. So we have seen growth, we have seen reproduction, and now we are moving to metabolism. Our living organisms are made of chemicals. So you see that all the living organisms are made of chemicals. These chemicals, small and big, belonging to various classes, size, functions, etc., are constantly being made and changed into some other biomolecules. These chemicals, they may be small or these may be big, and they belong to various classes. They are having various size, they are having various functions, and these chemicals are continuously being produced in our body and they are changed into some other biomolecule. These conversions are chemical reactions or metabolic reaction. So you call these as chemical reactions or metabolic reactions. There are thousands of metabolic reactions occurring simultaneously inside all living organisms, be they unicellular or multicellular. Whether they are unicellular organism or multicellular organism, there are thousands of metabolic reactions which are occurring simultaneously inside a living organism.